photography is not my full-time vocation, and I think a lot of people have that similar setup, especially if you're an enthusiast and it's not something you're doing to put food on the table.
Right. It's getting chillier.
It is, yeah. Nighttime, it's cold-ish, although it's nowhere near as cold as the rest of the U.S. as we record this. It's like 4 degrees in Chicago, and I'm complaining because it's probably 55 outside.
So we're in a Tesla. Yeah. I don't know if we may have said it before.
We've certainly had to have said that before.
But what normally happens at the beginning of an episode is I close all the doors.
Yes.
I went to close them and it says calibration needed.
Interesting.
Huh.
And
hold button to close door.
I don't know what that's going to do.
So I'm going to hold.
Oh! Was one of the doors not fully closed?
Oh, I wonder if I opened it up on. I don't even know what door.
It's
the trunk.
Oh, well, it seems to have finished. Calibrating.
Technology.
Excellent. Excellent.
Hello, people.
Yeah. Hey, Scott Davenport.
Spencer Pablo.
All right, and we're going to try to use the power of the Google-inspired browser to cast some additional white light on us because it's dark out here. So if you yeah, right. So yeah, if you see that the lighting changes a little bit, hey, just forgive us. And maybe you're just putting this in the background in some other browser tab and listening to us instead.
Yeah.
So
we've got a white browser here on the large, 17-inch screen in this car.
Work, yeah.
And the brightness,
it's like
up.
Bigger than my laptop.
Oh, that's bright.
Yep. Hopefully it's not too much, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So,
what do you want to talk about, man?
Yeah, so the topic I wanted to talk about, I mentioned this phrase, I'm going to guess, 9-10 episodes back or so. Prisons versus doorways. And this is something I've had this conversation with a variety of photographers. And it usually stems...
I forget, because we're lit.
Have all that shine on your face. Yeah. It's okay.
So you can
still see me.
Yeah.
But it usually stems from, people say, I don't have enough time to do photography because I have a day job, or, I'm a parent, or both. You're doing lots of things.
I'm too busy.
And, people tend to think of their jobs as the thing that prevents them from doing something. Well, I have a day job. Photography is not my full-time vocation, and I think a lot of people have that similar setup, especially if you're an enthusiast and it's not something you're doing to put food on the table.
Right.
And so the way I look at my day job is it's more of a doorway and not a prison, meaning I am able to buy a nice camera because I have a day job. I'm able to photograph what I like and not necessarily need to take on a client to say, go make a picture of this because if you don't, you can't make rent.
Right.
So that's, in a sense, in one way, it's a luxury.
Yeah.
And so really then what remains is for me to be disciplined enough to say, I'm done with the day job and I'm going to carve out a piece of time to dedicate to photography. And then
I'm so excited that you're telling me this, because when you first said prisons and
versus doorways, yeah.
When you first said that many episodes ago, I was like, what is that? How do you come up with this so quickly? Turns out this was something you were...
Oh, I've talked about this before. I've written about it on my blog probably, probably 2 years ago. All in the same vein of, how do you make time for photography? And the complaints around... I shouldn't even say complaints. It's more just the observations people make. I don't have time to do this, or I can't do that.
Right.
And to me, having something other than photography in your life, as far as it's going to take a certain amount of time, but if that's what is enabling you to live, hopefully have a roof over your head, support a family, whatever it might be, that's good and that's okay, and it really frees you from the opposite side of that coin. You talk to a photographer that is a working photographer 100% of the time. They make their living with their camera. They have their own version of, prisons versus doorways.
They do.
Where I would think, I'm going to take a guess here, but I would think if I'm 100% working photographer, I'm going to have to take jobs I don't necessarily like.
Yeah.
It is work. There's an amount
Right.
that's work. There's an amount of time that I'm not spending with my camera.
Sure.
Because this is the work part of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the doorway side of it is you're doing what you love. You know, so it's a
I get it
philosophical
now.
thing. It's a philosophical thing. It's
I
really
get
just
it.
how do you look at the world?
So,
Yeah.
if you're fortunate enough to be a 100% photographer
Mm-hmm.
and be able to sustain and feed your family, then awesome.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
it's not a luxury that a lot of my photographer colleagues have because
Mm-hmm.
it is tough. This is a tough industry.
Yes,
You know,
it is.
especially now that everyone says, my smartphone can take great
Yeah.
images. Why do I need to pay a photographer $700 to take pictures of my family? You know, why do I need to
Right,
do that?
Right.
It's pretty cutthroat. It's pretty tough to be able to do that. So if you can, man, that is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you're trying to do it, more power to you. That is pretty nice. But to those who want that blanket, I'm going to call it a blanket because that's how I refer to mine. Because you have a 9 to 5, I have a 9 to 5.
Right.
And it is my 9 to 5 allows me to be surrounded by all this tech, by the car that I'm sitting in, and it gives me that luxury to be able to, you know, to do all of these fun things. So I don't have to all the time hustle to go get, you know, the jobs that I probably wouldn't want to do.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, and if you're fortunate enough, you have a day job that you get some level of enjoyment out of. I mean,
Yeah.
everything in life is going to be a trade-off. I mean, I'm
Right.
trying not to sound too like yin yang zen type stuff here, but it's true. It really is. I mean,
Yeah.
there's, you know, I mean, there's always an aspect of a job that you're not going to enjoy.
So I will bring the yin
yeah.
yang into this because
Okay.
this has been my mantra for a very long time. I find balance, right? So my 9 to 5, I live in the analytic world. I'm an engineer and I do a lot of, I play with numbers, I play with software. That's what I do. So I live in that analytic world. When I pick up a camera, I don't anymore, really. I live in a creative world. And it's that yin yang, it's that balance where I earn my sleep because I exercise both hemispheres of my brain. If I haven't said that on this channel before, that's a crime.
I'm surprised you haven't. I don't know if you have. I know I've heard that phrase from you before.
Yeah.
And it's very true.
That you have to, that's how I feel.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
did
yeah.
well. If I get balance, and this happens a lot of times when my head hits the pillow, I'm just like, okay, did I do stuff that exercised both sides of my brain? Cool.
Yeah.
You know?
So, you know, that's something else too. I guess it kind of dovetails with this notion of, you know, how do you make time for photography?
Yes.
And so when I first started, this is probably like 2011, 2012, I like almost reintroduced myself to photography again. I had this on again, off again relationship since like the early 1990s, back in the 1900s when we had film. And so, you know, finding the time, and you know, it's one of those things where I'm standing in line to go get lunch.
Right.
All right, I can go read an article
Right.
about photography, something that I wanted to learn about, or you know, what's topical in the news.
Right.
Driving back and forth places. I got a load of podcasts. You should have this one in your feed, by the way.
You should be totally subscribing to this.
But you know, some of them are photography related, some of them are other things, but that's time that I can use to, you know, feed photography into my life. I may not be using the camera, but feeding the creative art so that when I do get those precious moments with the camera,
Yeah.
it's like, all right, I'm going to try this, or I'm going to do that, or I've been known to be driving back and forth from some place and stopping the car and stepping out of the car
Yeah.
and taking a picture of something that looked really cool. Or you know, if you're a parent, you know, you shuttle your kids back and forth.
Yeah.
You got time in between dropping them off and picking them up, do a little photo walk.
I
you know,
can
all that kind of
so
stuff.
I can
Yeah.
speak to every one of those
Yeah.
with actual examples. So there's my day job. I work a lot with like antenna systems, for instance, and trying to figure out how to mount these antennas so then that way they propagate appropriately and what type of atmospherics they're up to. I'm a big nerd. I wasn't kidding. So I remember one time I had to go over to actually multiple times. I had to go over to Virginia, to Norfolk, Virginia, and I worked over at a shipyard that had antenna systems installed on them. And I was like, what am I doing in Virginia? No offense to those who live in Norfolk, but it's not Southern California.
You might have mentioned this before. Yeah,
Right?
I think I know this story.
Right.
But go ahead. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I remember going to the airport one time, and I was like, okay, cool. The next time I showed up, I had a camera, and I noticed there's got to be something pretty that speaks to me here. And I noticed there was this door to a garden area that flanked the airport, and I figured I would show up early, and I showed up early to the airport. So that was a way that I was able to fit photography into waiting at an airport. Mm-hmm. Another thing is with my daughter, because I get a lot of questions. Hey, you know what? You're busy. I'm busy too. I have a family. How do you do this? And I'm like, well, to be honest with you, there's a lot of times where I wouldn't be able to go on and do some of these explorations for my creativity unless I brought my family, unless I put on my babysitter hat.
Sure.
The best way for me to do that was to give my daughter a camera. Mm-hmm. And it allowed both of us to get away from the house, to get away from the TV, to explore, to go hiking, to enrich, and to also take pictures and have family time. So that's how I was able to juggle a lot of those things.
Well, that's really cool.
Yeah.
You mentioned, it's funny you mentioned TV or so forth. That's something that is almost gone from my life.
Absolutely.
Because I'll make the choice of, well, I can watch whatever it is, or I'm going to spend time with, processing a photo or, going outside or whatever it might be. And I get it, we're fortunate that we live in a climate that is conducive to going outside year round. When you're not, I used to live on the East Coast. It's cold in the winter, and you just want to.
There's a cyclone happening right now.
Yeah, you want to hunker down and stay indoors.
Yeah.
Try to build up like a big amount of photos in the warmer months, and then you work on them in the winter months.
Yeah.
Or there's ways to do it, and there will end up being trade-offs, right? Mm-hmm. It's nature of life.
Yeah. So I am interested in finding out, because there are more ways of being able to juggle everyday life and have family life and photography. And so we've covered just a few things. I want to know what other people do, because I want to try those things out too.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to share something, share in the comments. If you don't want to do that, we actually do have a website, photographersandcars.com. You can contact us directly there.
It's a nice website.
Want to keep it private? That's cool too.
Yeah.
But how do you work photography into your weekly life? I wouldn't even say your daily routine, because that's probably asking a bit much.
So I hope you're listening to this in a podcast, and I hope it would be weird if you were, not weird, it actually would be pretty cool if you were listening to this because you wanted to fill that gap in your busy day with some type of a photography snippet, and we're that snippet for you. Thanks.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. High fives.
So,
That's rad.
Yeah. So that was the whole prison's doorways thing. It's really just a matter of how you look at your situation.
Yeah.
And if you look at it honestly, and I'd say positively, because you can always flip it around.
Sure.
You can always take it the negative road. But there's enough negativity in life already.
Yeah.
Be positive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks, guys.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you very much. It'll be a nice short episode. It'll be refreshing. We had fun. I had a big bowl of fun. Now
I had just coffee.
I have to pee. I really actually do have to pee.
All right, man, let's get going.
Thanks, guys.
All right, see ya.